तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृष्णभानु सुते देवे प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय वांछा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So, excuse me, we are discussing the 18th chapter. I think we covered 45th verse on Friday, and we have to start from the 46th verse today. So I'll share my screen. Let's recite this verse. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, let's recite this verse. You can repeat after me. Yataha pravittir bhutanam
Yataha pravrittir-bhutanam
yena sarvamidam tatam
yena sarvamidam tatam
swakarmana tamadhyarcha
swakarmanatam abhyarcha
siddhim vindati manavaha.
siddhim vindati manavaha.
Yataha pravrittir bhutanam
Yataha pravrittir-bhutanam
yena sarvamidam tatam
yena sarvamidam tatam
swakarmana tamabhyarcha
swakarmanatam abhyarcha
siddhim vindati manavaha.
siddhim vindati manavaha.
Yataha pravrittir bhutanam
Yataha pravrittir-bhutanam
yena sarvamidam tatam
yena sarvamidam tatam
swakarmana tamabhyarcha
swakarmanatam abhyarcha
siddhim vindati manavaha.
siddhim vindati manavaha.
What else would like to recite?
Yataha pravritti bhutanam
Yataha pravrittir bhutanam
yena sarvam tam tatam
yena
Yena
sarvamidam
sarvamidam
tatam
tatam
swakarmanam tam abhyaccha
swakarmana
swakarmanatam
tamabhyarcha
abhyarcha
siddhim vindatti manavaha.
siddhim
siddhim
vindati
vindati
manavaha.
manavaha.
Yataha pravartir bhutanam
Yataha
Yata
pravrittir bhutanam
pravrittir-bhutanam
yena sarvamidam tatam
yena
yena
sarvamidam tatam
sarvamidam tatam
swakarmana tam abhyaccha
swakarmana tamabhyarcha
swakarmanatam abhyarcha
siddhim vindati manava.
siddhim vindati manavaha.
manavaha.
Anyone else?
Yata pravrittir. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sujata.
Oh. Yata pravrittir-bhutanam
Yataha pravrittir bhutanam
yena sarvam idam tatam
yena sarvamidam tatam
swakarmanatam abhyarcha
swakarmana tamabhyarcha
siddhim vindati manava.
siddhim vindati manavaha.
Gata prabhiti bhutanam
Yataha pravrittir bhutanam
yena sarvamidam tatam
yena sarvamidam tatam
tatam
sakarmana tamabhyarcha
swakarmana tamabhyarcha
siddhim vindati manavaha.
siddhim vindati manavaha.
Yata pravrit bhutanam
Yataha pravrittir bhutanam
ena sarvam idam tatam
yena sarvamidam tatam
swakarmanatam abhyaccha
swakarmana tamabhyarcha
siddhim vindati manavaha.
siddhim vindati manavaha. Okay, let's recite the synonyms. Yataha,
Yataha.
Yataha.
from whom?
From
From
whom?
whom?
Pravrittihi,
Pravritti.
Prabhuti.
the emanation.
The emanation.
Emanation.
Bhutanam,
Bhutanam.
Bhutanam.
of all living entities.
Of all living entities.
Yena,
Yena.
Enam.
by whom?
By whom?
By who?
Sarvam,
Sarvam.
Sarvam.
all.
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 Idam,
Idam.
Idam.
this.
This.
Tatam,
Tatam.
Tatam.
is pervaded.
Is
Is
pervaded.
pervaded.
Swakarmana,
Swakarmana.
Swakarmana.
by his own duties.
By his own duties.
Tam,
Tam.
Tvam.
him,
Him.
Him.
abhyarchya,
Abhyarcha.
Abhyarcha.
by worshipping.
By
By
worshipping.
worshipping.
Siddhim,
Siddhim.
Shabdhim.
perfection.
Perfection.
Vindati,
Vindati.
achieves.
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 Manavaha,
Manavaha.
a man.
A man.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. By worshipping of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all pervading, a man can attain perfection through performing his own work. Purport. As stated in the 15th chapter, all living beings are fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. Thus, the Supreme Lord is the beginning of all living entities. This is confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra. Janmadhyasya. The Supreme Lord is therefore the beginning of life of every living entity. And as stated in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord, by his two energies, his external energy and internal energy, is all pervading. Therefore, one should worship the Supreme Lord with his energies. Generally, the Vaishnava devotees worship the Supreme Lord with his internal energy. His external energy is perverted reflection of the internal energy. The external energy is a background, but the Supreme Lord, by the expansion of his plenary portion as Paramatma, is situated everywhere. He is the super soul of all demigods and human beings, all animals, everywhere. One should therefore know that as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, one has his duty to render service unto the Supreme. Everyone should be engaged in devotional service to the Lord in full Krishna consciousness. That is recommended in this verse. Everyone should think that he is engaged in a particular type of occupation by Rishikesha, the master of the senses, and by the result of the work in which one is engaged, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, should be worshipped. If one thinks always in this way, in full Krishna consciousness, then by the grace of the Lord, he becomes fully aware of everything. That is the perfection of life. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 12.7, Tesham aham samudharta. The Supreme Lord himself takes charge of delivering such a devotee. That is the highest perfection of life. In whatever occupation one may be engaged, if he serves the Supreme Lord, he will achieve the highest perfection. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisheshi Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. I'll read the translation one more time. By worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all pervading, a man can attain perfection through performing his own work. So this is one of the most important verses of Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada makes a very important point also here. We'll come to that point. But so what has happened so far is, if you remember, the previous section of this chapter, which Mataji was discussing on Friday, Vallabhi Gopi Mataji talked about the Varnashram Dharma. And even before that, if you remember, the Varnas at least were kind of introduced by Krishna in the 4th chapter. 4.13 Krishna had said, Chaturvarnya maya shrishtam gunakarma vibhagasaha tasya kartaram apimam vidhiya kartaram abhyayam. He said, I have actually established the system of 4 varnas. But he just talked about it there. He didn't give any details. For what purpose have he, for what purpose the 4 varnas have been introduced? What is, what are we going to achieve with that? So that is now being discussed by Krishna over here. So we'll go to that. But So yataha pravrittir bhutanam, from whom, no, from that Lord from whom everything has emanated. Krishna also says aham sarvasya prabhavaha, from him everything comes. Yataha pravrittir bhutanam, all living entities have come from Krishna. And yena sarvam idam tatam, and he is pervading everything. He is present everywhere as Paramatma. So actually, if we all have come from Krishna, now we can say that, okay, a child comes from his father, and as the child grows up, the father definitely maintains the child, but as the child grows up, he kinds of becomes self-sufficient, and then he doesn't need his father, and then and of course he has some cordial relationship with the father, but he doesn't need the father so much for his maintenance. But that is not the case with Krishna. Krishna says yena sarvamidam tatam, actually I pervade the entire universe. I pervade the entire material world. And therefore Prabhupada also explains in the purport that we have a duty to worship the Lord. So Krishna says swakarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim vindati manavaha, through your work worship me. And if you worship me like this, you will attain siddhi. Siddhi is perfection. A human being can attain perfection like this. So often this verse is mistranslated as work is worship. This is very common mistranslation of this verse, but actually that is not the meaning of this verse. Prabhupada also writes in the purport that actually through our worship through our work we should worship Krishna. We should offer our work itself to Krishna. This is a very, very important verse for the devotees also. Generally the idea of not the devotees, but in the karma yoga, the idea is that we should offer our fruits to Krishna. But actually here in this verse, Krishna is saying offer your work itself to me. Through your work you can worship me. Of course, one of the way to worship Krishna through our work is offering the results of our work, but we can actually offer the work itself to Krishna. And we see that Krishna also says that in the 8th chapter of the Gita, where Krishna says to Arjuna that he says that offer your mind and intelligence to me, and in that consciousness you fight the war. So the idea was that you constantly think about Krishna and also fight the war. So I remember there was a college, VIT or something like that, when I was in India. They had this kind of a tagline with the name Swakarmanatam Abhyarchya, and they use this Swakarmanatam Abhyarchya, and their translation of Swakarmanatam Abhyarchya was work is worship. So I remember there was a similar question asked to Jayadvait Maharaj in one of the lectures, and Jayadvait Maharaj said that if work is worship, then donkey is the greatest worshipper, because donkey does a lot of hard work, so nobody can do as much hard work as a donkey does. So he said actually if work is worship, then actually donkey is the greatest worshipper. So but that is not the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita's philosophy is through our work we have to worship Krishna. Now if we understand what's happening over here, in the previous chapters, in chapters 14, 16, and 17, the influence of the modes, that was talked about. But in this chapter, the control of the mode is more, what it kind of tells us is that the control of the mode is more thorough than we can imagine. Jnanam gyayam parigyata trividha karma chodana karnam karma karteti trividha karma sangraha. So it says, everything, all the constituents of our actions, the motivations of our actions, and even the happiness that we get out of our actions, everything is controlled by the three modes. So the control of the mode is very, very thorough. Now, does that mean that we all are controlled forever? No. The Lord has given us a plan and a program by which we can become free from this control through purification. And that plan and the program is basically Varnashrama. So the Bhagavatam, in this same chapter also, Krishna had said earlier in the 18th chapter itself that everyone in the entire universe, even in the higher planetary systems, everyone is controlled by the three modes. Srimad Bhagavatam also says, if you remember, there is a verse which says that except Naranarayan Rishi and Lord Narayan himself, none of the other living entities are actually free from the control of the mode. So that means even Lord Shiva, even Lord Brahma are controlled by not controlled, but at least influenced by the three modes. So but there is a plan. We all are controlled by the modes, but within the control of the modes, we all have, certain freedom. So we have to act according to that freedom, but act according to guidance of the scriptures. So uh, if we understand the Varnashram system a little more thoroughly, what exactly is Varnashram system? It is basically a natural and efficient division of human labor. Every human being is a certain kind. He has certain strengths and certain weaknesses. So what the Varnashram system does is it uses the strength of that. It basically puts the strength to the use where the human being can actually develop in that way, and then it puts him into that kind of occupation where the weaknesses are not so much magnified. So it kinds of puts the person in a comfortable position, at least materially, so that the person can focus on the spiritual development. So now, if you understand the word varna means, varna definitely means swabhav, but it also means color. So color means, it is kind of explained by the acharyas that the soul is there, but the subtle body, it is under the influence of varnas, in the sense that the subtle body gets colored by the different modes. So it has certain plus and minus points. So the subtle body essentially means we have our mind, intelligence, and false ego. So we have a particular way of thinking, we have a particular way of doing things, right? Every person, even if we look at the devotees, we can say that, okay, we all are here in the temple, we are doing devotional service, but we see that every devotee is kind of inspired to do different kinds of activities within the purview of devotional service. So we do have our basic minimum sadhana of the 16 rounds that we do. We have the 4 regulative principles, but besides that, you will see that actually there are certain devotees who like kirtan very much. There are certain devotees who like to read scriptures very much. They are very, very scholarly. There are certain devotees who like to do deity worship. There are certain devotees who are very good in cooking for Krishna. There are certain devotees who like to clean the temple, clean the utensils, and they will jump for that kind of services. Of course, there are some devotees like Rasraj Prabhu who can do everything very well, but by far not all the devotees are like that. So even within we see that every devotee is a different kind of devotee. He has certain likes and dislikes. He is good in certain things, he is not so good in other things. So even the modern science has kind of understood that we all have our different natures, and the modern science explains that more in terms of genetics. Everybody is controlled by the influence of the genes, but actually, no, it is not that the genes is is an independent explanation from the 3 modes. Actually, the influence of the past karma is manifesting through the genes. So the genes essentially becomes the biological medium for our past samskaras to act. So if we there is something called as Swabhavavad in the Vedic literature, in the Vedic philosophy. There is something called as Swabhavavad. Swabhavavad, essentially, it's a negative term which refers to, there are persons who would argue that, this is my Swabhav. I can't change myself. This is how I am. This is exactly what Duryodhana speaks to Krishna when Krishna goes as the Shanti Dut. Before the war had been fought, Krishna goes as the peace messenger. So he goes to Duryodhan, and there was Krishna actually puts a lot of arguments in front of Duryodhan and his father Dhritarashtra, and his arguments were so convincing that for the first time there was a kind of fight between Dushyasan and Duryodhan. The Dushyasan had never gone against Duryodhan, but for the first time when Dushyasan heard the convincing arguments of Krishna, he thought that there is no point in fighting this war. We are going to lose miserably. So he kinds of walks out of the assembly, and Duryodhana later goes and convinces Dushyasan. He says that actually this Krishna is a magician. He basically speaks in a way, it gets in a flowery language that it convinces. So Dushyasan is also like a kind of an evil person. So he gets convinced then with Duryodhana. But one of the counter argument that Duryodhan makes to Krishna's argument is that he says that actually what Krishna had spoken in the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, Nigraha kim karishyati, if you remember, there was a verse that came, what can, artificial repression, accomplish, if this is how your nature is, that is what Krishna had said. Exactly, that is what Duryodhana says to Krishna. He says that actually, I don't find anything wrong in what I am doing. This is how the destiny has made me. This is how I am, and whatever I am doing is actually right. So this is called as Sabhava. This is how my Sabhava is, and this is how I will act. And if you see the scientism that is there, in the modern science, in the modern world, we have a philosophy called as scientism. So scientism essentially basically means that the science, as we know, it doesn't accept anything spiritual. So according to science, everything is everything is made up of chemicals. Even our consciousness, according to them, it's a modification of different chemicals. It is basically a result of some chemical reaction. So, and that is why everybody has a different kind of chemicals inside their brain, and that is why everybody has is a different kind of person. So that is what scientism means. But Einstein, Einstein was a German scientist. He was born in a Jewish family. So he said that actually, if I take the scientism worldview to its conclusion, I think that there is nothing wrong with, why nothing wrong was done by these Nazis. Nazis had killed millions and millions of Jews. Actually, I don't have the exact number, but he said that actually, if I take the scientism worldview to its conclusion, it says that everybody is made up of certain chemicals and everybody is programmed in certain way, and nobody has any free will. So they are just acting according to their instincts. So the Nazis, they acted according to their instincts, and they basically killed these Jews. So there is nothing wrong with what they did. So, and then Einstein said that actually I cannot accept this. This is such a perverse kind of explanation for their behavior. So our idea is that there is Swabhav, but we also have our free will. We have to use our free will wisely. We have to control our negative sides, and we have to enhance our positive sides. So actually, how this can be done? This is basically the idea of Varnashram. So this is like a very, very unique, system that is given in the Vedic culture. So we see that all religions talk about progressing spiritually, and basically the idea is to transcend the world. But Varnashram and Vedic culture is the only culture in the world that offers a structure and system for spiritual transformation. A structure for spiritual transformation is not found in any other religious tradition of the world. There is a, excuse me, Christian devotee. He had once written an article. He was earlier in the Christian tradition, and later he became a devotee. So he actually wrote an article, and it was published on thenwords.com. I read it. I found it very interesting. He said that he actually practiced Christianity for so many number of years, but he said that what it essentially is: belief in the beginning, belief in the end, and belief throughout. There was no process for transformation. There were no checks and balances. There was no framework to determine if you are progressing spiritually or not. Essentially, there are no tangible goals to achieve. Basically, believe that Jesus is the savior throughout the life. Believe that you are being saved, and at the end you will be saved. So now, to a large extent, people might say that it is basically a caricature of the original Christianity that exists today. But to a large extent, it is true that this is what Christianity is. And actually, not just that, other religions like Christianity and Islam, they condemn Vedic tradition. They say that you believe in sadhana, that means you don't have any faith in God's mercy. So their idea is that you don't have to do any sadhana, you don't have to do anything, just have faith in God, and that faith itself will take you back to Godhead. And that is their idea. But we see that if that were the case, that if only God's faith can take us back, then why was we see that Jesus himself was a celibate? And not just Jesus, actually all the apostles, they were all celibates and they were all sense controlled. Why was that? Actually, that is because our devotion to God, is has to be manifest externally in our lives. If we believe that I am being saved, then I have to live my life as I am being saved. It's not that I just believe that I am being saved and I'm living my life as if I am condemned. No, this is not the idea. So, but we see that in the Vedic culture, it basically offers a structure. So it starts from the brahmachari life. So basically what happens in the brahmachari life is you basically get spiritual impressions. You get a spiritual foundation. Brahmachari means brahmacharati iti brahmachari, one who does charan in Brahman, one who pursues Brahman, he is a brahmachari. So basically we get a very strong spiritual foundation in the brahmachari life. And then once you have that strong spiritual foundation, then then you go to the next stage, which is the grahastha. And even within grahastha, we see that the Vedic culture is so profound that it gives a lot of checks and balances, that the grahastha has to live his life dharmically. If we see the Vedic philosophy, this is not a bhakti philosophy, by the way, this is the Vedic philosophy: dharma, artha, kam, and moksha. So actually dharma is what is being taught in the brahmachari life. Once you have that dharmic foundation, dharma, then artha and kama comes in the grahastha life. And then in the vanaprastha and in the sannyas, you basically think about moksha. So that is the idea of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. And that is its relationship with the ashram system that we have in the Vedic culture. So in the grahastha life also, the idea is that we live very spiritually, we live dharmically. And then finally, we go to vanaprastha. Now again, focus back on the spiritual life. So we have had those spiritual impressions in the brahmachari life. And then we can again, the impressions are still there, the sanskaras are still there. So in vanaprastha, we should still again, again focus back on our spiritual life. That's the idea. We see that there is both actually in Mahabharata and Ramayana. There is a very, there's a teaching that comes out. So in Mahabharata, we see that when the Agyatwas of the Pandavas are over and they are going back to their to take their kingdom back, either through war or through peace negotiations. So when they're going back, when they come down from the Himalaya mountains, so actually there the prayers are led by Yudhishthir. So Yudhishthir basically kinds of prays that, "Oh Himalaya, please bless us so that we can again come back very soon and take your shelter." And the same pastime when the Lord Ram, Lakshman, and Sita, they are coming back from Lanka, so they pass through Chitrakoot. So there Mother Sita leads the prayers. The same prayer is there in Ramayana also, that Himalaya mountain, please bless us so that we can again come back soon and take your shelter. So the idea is they are preparing for Vanaprastha. I remember there was a lecture that was given by Jayadvaita Maharaj. This was long time back, and there was like a couple which got married recently. So they were a devotee couple. So they asked Jayadvaita Maharaj that, "Maharaj, in what consciousness should we actually enter into Grahastha life?" So Maharaj said, Jayadvaita Maharaj gives just one-line answers. He doesn't speak much. So he said that you should enter into Grahastha life while preparing for Vanaprastha. So that preparation for Vanaprastha is to be there. So the idea is that our eyesight should be fixed on the ultimate goal, which is the spiritual development. So the future is very, very clear in this varnashram system. We understand that, okay, whatever we are doing in our life, ashram actually means a hermitage, ashram. So the idea of hermitage is basically we are there for a spiritual purpose. So whenever we say ashram, whether it is brahmachari or grahastha or vanaprastha or sannyas, the idea is that we have to make spiritual progress in the life. And also this ashram system in the Vedic culture is very, very remarkable. It gives very tangible direction for a spiritual elevation. Nothing like that in other culture exists. in the other culture, they start with belief, they live with belief, and they end with belief. No, along with belief, they have certain rituals, but there is no direct process for increasing the renunciation. Here we have a lot of goals that, okay, by this age, this is what we should do. By this age, this is what we should do. This is the kind of renunciation I should have. And if a lot of people would know that in the ashram system, the grahastha ashram is not mandatory, it is optional. It's not that everybody has to mandatorily pass through grahastha. So only when brahmachari ashram is there, and if person thinks that I want to make spiritual progress, I don't want to get into worldly life, then he can directly go to either sannyas or vanprastha. He doesn't have to necessarily enter the grahastha life. So grahastha is kind of optional. Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the Chaitanya Shikshamrit, he writes that indeed all intelligent people will agree that the Vaigyanik Varnashram, the scientific Varnashram system, is the best system for spiritual advancement. And he says that actually such a system is never been found anywhere else in the world. He says all intelligent people would agree. That means those who would not agree, they are not intelligent. They don't really understand things as they are. So we understand that today Varna is kind of, it has kind of broken down. It has kind of become distorted. And what we have today in the society is like a caricature of the original Varna system. To a large extent in our ISKCON tradition, we see that the ashram system is working very well. We have brahmacharis, at least in India, it's working very well. We have brahmacharis, we have grahasthas, we have vanaprasthas also, and we have sannyasis also. It's working very, very well. Of course, the Varna system is not that much established, but I think there are some efforts being made to establish even the Varna system. But ashram system is very well established in ISKCON. So Varna is not exactly caste. It is like a distortion, a caricature of the original Varnashram system that once existed. And actually, there was a lot of Muslim, Christian, and Marxist propaganda that highlighted the negative side of the caste system also. Of course, there is exploitation which is there today in the name of caste. There is discrimination that is there in the name of caste. In India, we know that there are reservations given by the government based on the caste of a person, and many people exploit that also. But actually, there is also a positive side, not in the today's system that exists, but if we look at the original Varna system that existed, there is definitely a positive side to it. And that positive side is that the material life is very, very uncomplicated. It's a very simple life, and the person doesn't have to worry too much about the material life. Because what happens is that, if you see guna and karma, when Krishna says, chaturvarnya maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagasa. So guna and karma. So guna means we have our internal qualities, that is guna. And based on those gunas, we choose our external activities. So it's not that, what happens today is there are certain professions that are being, glamorized too much. And everybody is trying to run towards those kind of professions, and that person may not have that inner nature to do those kind of professions. Even there are certain personality traits that are being glamorized, that we should be outspoken, we should be able to speak nicely, we should look good. Those kind of personality traits are being glamorized, and everybody wants to become like that. But actually, not everybody can be like that. And what happens today is, because of the social media, because of the internet, people are getting compared to the best of the worlds. We have the celebrities who are there, and when people compare themselves to those celebrities, they say that, no, I'm such a useless third class person. And that kinds of brings in a lot of negativity inside us. So I'm good for nothing. So that thing did not exist when the Varnashram system was there. We understood that, okay, there, every person, so the Varna is basically essentially 4 kinds of human beings. So we have the There are people who normally, they are good in reading. They not, naturally like to read shastras. They naturally like to, do scriptural studies. Then there are people who naturally like to administrate. They naturally like, they are attracted to weapons. So we see in the pastime of Parshuram, right from his childhood, even though he was born to a Brahmin, Jamdagni Rishi was a Brahmin, but he would see that Parshuram, right from his childhood, he had tremendous attraction towards weapon. And he was naturally, without even any training, he was very efficient at weapons. So it is like a natural instinct for the person. And then there is another, there is a third category of person who are very attracted to earning money. We also see in our society nowadays, everybody is kind of running after money. But some people, they have a very strong urge, to, even in our temple we see that there are devotees who like to do fundraising. They like to, take big projects, building temples and, executing them. And then there are people who are artisans, who are artists. So these are like four natural qualities of, persons, they're not qualities but category of people that exist. So, and Varna also, what it does is, uh, it basically provides like a bigger security net, like a social security net. So like every Varna, it becomes like a larger family. We have, like, for Brahmins is a large family. The Kshatriyas is a large family. It provides a larger social security net. So the real problem in the Varnashram came when it became stratified and talents were not allowed to be expressed. If one Varna had the talent for another Varna, those were not allowed to be expressed. It became very stratified. That time it kind of started breaking down. But it had its a lot of positive side also. Bhakti Vikas Maharaj had written a book. The name of the book was Glimpses of Traditional Life. Uh, Prannath Prabhu had actually brought that book for me. It was such a nice book. So actually, I also, I was studying in convent school when I was in my school life, and I also had a very negative impression about this caste system. We didn't understand Varna and Ashram at that time. At least I didn't understand that in that way. So I had a very negative impression about caste system. But if you read this book, essentially this book, there are there are interviews of devotees who have lived in a traditional rural Indian setting. So there are interviews like that of Loknath Maharaj has been interviewed in that book. So they basically talk about, and this is just 50 to 100 years, between 50 to 100 years from now. So they basically describe that Loknath Maharaj, for example, he described that, they were living in a village, and he said that there was not one beggar in the village. What would happen is there was like a community feeling. Everybody would take care of each other, and even if one family is not doing that great, all the other people would come together and they will support them, help them. And again, as we know that there are certain ups and downs that comes in the life. As that time passes through, then this family again becomes self-sufficient. So that community feeling is there in that village. So they would help each other in different ways. Also, we see that if we look at the history of India, no other country in the world has been attacked as much and as many times as India was attacked. India was repeatedly devastated. When Islam was ruling on India, it was not a very peaceful rule. There were still, there were Islamic rulers in the India, but still other Islamic rulers were trying to attack India from all sides. There were attackers that coming from Iran, coming from Iraq, from Turkey. Everybody was trying to, India was such a flourishing country at that time. Everybody was trying to get something out of India. And repeatedly India was attacked, and repeatedly it was looted, and so many things were we can read the history. Actually, the kind of killing that have happened in India, it is unparalleled. Nowhere in the world, actually, even if we say Jews were killed, there was much more massacre that happened for the Hindus, that was done by these Islamic raiders. So what they used to do is, they used to come and attack these cities, plunder the cities, and take the riches back with them. And they used to come again and again and again. So what happens is, although the city would get plundered, but the actual riches of the riches were very prominently there in the cities, but the prosperity was not in the cities. The prosperity was actually in the villages. It was not very visible in the villages, but that varnashram system that exists in the villages. So from the villages, this prosperity would again come back to the cities, and again and again and again, the cities were devastated. But this whole thing broke down when the village system of India was broken down. When industrialization came up, the village system was completely devastated. And actually it is, we know that it's a little unfortunate turn of events that happened. So after independence, we can see in the history that Mahatma Gandhi, he wanted to develop India according to the village system of the economy. He didn't want the industrialization so much. And actually Ambedkar had vehemently opposed. He said that if you develop India on the village model, there will be again caste system. And Gandhi said, yes, I agree that there are so many different problems with the caste system. But he said it is the best social system, this best social order for India. He definitely rejected the untouchability idea that was there in the caste system that time. But what happened was, when Gandhi was killed, Nathuram Godse. So actually, although Gandhi was himself a practicing Hindu, but when Nathuram Godse killed him, so the word saw that a Hindu had killed Gandhi. So at that time, there were two prominent Hindu organizations, VHP and RSS. Both were banned. And Nehru, as we know, that he was like a Marxist. So Nehru actually got a free hand at that time. And he started developing India on the industrial model. He definitely, he didn't want this village model at all. So at that time, this whole idea of the varnashram was completely lost at that time. There was no way it can be done. Recently, at least 5-6 years back, the Supreme Court gave a judgment. It said that there cannot be two Indias in India. What does it mean, two Indias in India? It said that actually the cities like Bangalore, Chennai, Mumbai, Delhi, they are flourishing. But at the same time, they are the villages, small villages which are there, and their people are starving. They're committing suicide. So it's told the government, you should do something about this. But what had happened is, because the whole system had been broken down, it's not very easy to actually develop villages. So now we understand that actually Varnashram is not just a system of spiritual advancement. Prabhupada explains very insightfully in one of his lectures. He says that actually Varna is for the body and Ashram is for the soul. He says Varna is external, Ashram is internal. So Varna is for the body, means it is like a social structure. Guna karma vibhagasaha. Now we have our gunas, and according to our gunas, we choose our karma. So that way our material life becomes very smooth, very steady. And ashram is for our spiritual development. So we have the social order as Varna and spiritual order as ashram. So we have our sannyasis. They are higher than us in spiritual order. So social order and spiritual order. So actually Varnashram system takes care of both material and the spiritual side. Now we do have say for example, if we talk about a Vaishya, that Vaishya might become too complacent, that okay, I'm earning so much money, I'm doing so good, what is the need in my life to do anything? But then we have the ashram system, that okay, after you have done, after the age of 50, you should start getting renounced, you should start living your family life, retire from active business life. So that basically kinds of gives some checks and balances for spiritual development also. So this here in this verse 18.46, yataha pravrittir bhutanam yena sarvamidam tatam swakarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim vindati manavah. So before that, Krishna had talked about varnashram, but here he's saying that varnashram is not just a system for nothing. He says that varnashram is we should live our life that is devoted to Krishna. So here he's talking about varnashram should be devoted to Krishna. So he says, Yena sarvam idam tatam. So this Yena sarvam idam tatam had come twice earlier. First it had come in the 2nd chapter, 17th verse, Avinashi tu tatvidhi Yena sarvam idam tatam. So there it was referring to soul. Then again the same sentence had come in the 8th chapter, in the 22nd verse, Yasyantah sthani bhutani yena sarvamidam tatam. So there it was referring to the super soul. So again, in this verse here, 18.46, Yena Sarvamidam Tatam refers to the super soul, to the Supreme Lord himself. Now, everything has come from Krishna, and Krishna is actually pervading everything. It's not that once everything has come out from Krishna, Krishna has abandoned this world. Krishna is actually pervading everything, and because Krishna is maintaining everything, we have, Prabhupada explains that we have a duty, to worship him, and we should worship Krishna through our work. Swakarmana tam abhyarcha siddhim bindati manava. Sometimes people have this idea, I am just a student and there is nothing spiritual about it, so I should just give up my studies. These kind of arguments are given by students. Even my son was giving me this argument once. I was explaining him the verse 10.9. So he kind of became very elated. He said that, no, why is there need to study? Let me just focus on Krishna consciousness. He kind of he was thinking that he can fool me with that idea. But the idea is that bhakti is not an isolated activity. Bhakti is actually an integrated activity. Now, Krishna doesn't say anything impractical. This is, if we see the philosophy in the Bhagavad Gita, is very, very practical. Bhakti is actually an integrated activity. Now, everything that we do in our life, that itself can become devotional service. Of course, we have to follow some bare minimum standards. Prabhupada gave us the barometer that, okay, you have to do these 16 rounds daily, and then you have to follow these 4 regulative principles. And if you're following these basic principles, and then you have to work in a consciousness that you have to make spiritual progress, you have to offer everything back to Krishna. And if you're working in that consciousness, you can make spiritual progress. So I just stop here and see if there are any questions or comments or corrections.
So how division of varna doesn't seem to be that easy. Like, for example, in one family, somebody, might want to be a Brahmin, another person might just want to work with his hands. How does that get divided?
Okay, so I think Mataji explained. Sorry, someone was saying something. Okay, on Friday, Vallabhi Mataji was explaining that there are 3 kinds of Varnashram systems. We have the Vedic Varnashram system, we have the Devi Varnashram system, and we have the Asuri Varnashram system. So the Vedic Varnashram system is basically that, by birth, people would have the same qualities. So if a baby is born to Brahmin parents, they would naturally have Brahminical qualities. There would be few exceptions like that of Parshuram, and there will be solid reasons for those exceptions. But more or less that would be there. But if we see in Mahabharata, there is a pastime where there is this Nahusha, who was a king who had become a snake, and he kind of captures I think Bhima, and then Yudhishthir Maharaj goes to free him from Nahusha. So at that time, Nahusha tells Yudhishthir that you have to answer my questions. So he asks about, this Varnashram system to Yudhishthir Maharaj. So Yudhishthir Maharaj explains that actually, yes, earlier, all the Varnashram system used to be based on birth. You can be fairly sure that like a baby that was being born to Brahmins or Kshatriyas, they would naturally have those qualities. But he said that until a few thousand years ago, that was okay. But after that, there were a lot of intermixing that happened between the 2 Varnas. And because of that, this system is no longer based on birth. It has to be based on the qualities, and that is when Yudhishthir Maharaj was explaining to him 5,000 years ago. So that was like the Vedic Varnashram system. But then comes the Devic Varnashram system. Devic Varnashram system is based on the qualities itself. That okay, if you have certain qualities, you will be accepted as part of that Varna. We see in Bhagavatam, there are many pastimes where a king will have, it is mentioned that okay, this king had 20 sons, 2 were Brahmins and the rest were Kshatriyas. So how were those 2 Brahmins? So the idea is that there is a possibility that after so much intermixing of Varnas that have happened, there would be cases where a person belonging to a different Varna would be born to the parents belonging to a different Varna. And the Asuric Varna system, Varnashram system is basically, people think even though they may not have the qualities, but they will, demand the rights of that particular Varna. I was born in a Brahmin family and therefore I must have my rights. I'm a Brahmin. So you have to accept it based on just the face value. But your question is, how do we know? So at least it is mentioned in one of the books written by one of the Maharajas. He has done a lot of research on the Vedic literature. So he writes that in the Manusmriti, there is a rule that is given that, it is possible that, a particular child that is born to particular parents, he will not naturally have those qualities that the parents would have. So it is mentioned there that in that case, there would be we can set up like a panel, where the three elders of the society who are very knowledgeable, who understand dharma, who understand Vedic scriptures, basically kind of it hints towards Brahmins. So they will, watch the child for few years, like 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, and they can determine that, okay, what kind of qualities the child is exhibiting. So based on that, it can be decided. Of course, nowadays in Kali Yuga, everybody is a Shudra. Nobody is Brahmin, nobody is Kshatriya. We have Vaishyas mostly and Shudras here. Vaishyas also, if you see the qualities that are mentioned by Krishna in the 18th chapter itself is, Goraksha and Vanijyam, and Krishi, Goraksha and Vanijyam. So Krishi is farming, Goraksha is cow protection, and Vanijyam is business, mercantile. So very few actually fall into that category. So more or less the entire population is kind of Shudra if we go by what is described in the scriptures.
But even now we see that in the school system, when you put every child in a certain category of school system, not everybody takes to it the same way, I mean,
Right.
Some children like to work better with their hands, and some children
Exactly.
are more mentally into the
Right.
curriculum. And
That's what I was saying, even in
some children are more sporty, so
right.
it's very hard to get, like, by pumping the same kind of curriculum to 100 students. Not all of those 100 students fall into taking to that one pumped curriculum.
Right. No, and even in our devotee society, as I was mentioning, we see that there are different kinds of inclinations that devotees have. So, definitely everybody will do 16 rounds of chanting and the basic minimum sadhana which is required. But now and then some people are more inclined towards scripture, some people are inclined towards kirtan, some people are inclined towards deity worship. So every devotee has a different kind of inclination, and accordingly they have their own kind of groups, and nothing wrong with it. They should have groups with like-minded devotees if they want to feel valued in the society of devotees, I mean.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, I'm somehow not inclined to do anything.
Sorry, Mate, what is that?
Some are not inclined to do anything. I was going to say. And Srila Prabhupada, I think he said, you can't be lazy. Like, remember, I think he gave the example of when there's a fire, like, oh, just turn towards the other side or something. That person is like really lazy. And he can be allowed to be lazy or something like that.
Any other questions, comments? We don't have time to start another verse.
I think that those people who do not, that those devotees who do nothing associate with other devotees who do nothing.
Prabhu, do you want to give examples? I hope you're not talking about me.
You know who you are.
But who are the other devotees we associate with? That's what we'd like to know.
Actually, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami says that we should have Sajati Asha Bhagavad Bhakti's Sangha. So it is basically Sajati Asha means like-minded, and Bhagavad Bhakti means devotee, and Sangha means association. So generally it is recommended even by our acharyas that we should have association of like-minded devotees. That means if I like to read scriptures, I should have association of those devotees who like to read scriptures. And in that kind of society, I can progress more. I can progress more swiftly, and I can be valued in that association. So if a particular devotee likes kirtan, and if I go to a group of devotees who like kirtan, and I have no taste in kirtan, and they have no taste in scriptures, so then it would be very difficult for me also and for them also to deal with me.
So I think establishing Varna is going to be harder, though, like you said, than ashrama.
Ashram is, I would say, very well established as of now. Of course,
Yeah,
there could be
ashrama,
some.
I can see it being well established. It's easier to establish in one sense.
Varna is now, at least there are efforts being made, like GEV is one effort like that. The Govardhaniko village is there, where they're trying to establish, at least in parts, if not fully. Of course, I don't know how to establish Kshatriyas, but
I know,
of
I was
course,
just going to say the exact same
Kshatriyas
thing.
could be not so much in fighting and all, but at least in administering, we could talk about, people who like to manage things,
Security, yeah.
manage things and make sure things are running smooth. That is also one of the Ishwar
Right,
Bhav
right.
that is mentioned in the 18th chapter. Ishwar Bhav is, Prabhupada explains leadership qualities. He translates that as. So leadership means managing and delegating and basically what Pyari Prabhu does. That is like also a Kshatriya quality.
We have also Vaishyas, devotees, but we don't see too many Vaishyas that protect cows and work on a farm.
Right.
We have all the business Vaishyas.
Just Vanijyam. There is no Goraksha and what is
Right.
that?
Well, we
Krishi.
have farm communities.
Yeah. So GV is actually a farm community.
What is?
GV, Govardhaniko village.
Right, right. But we have farm communities with very few devotees there. They're struggling,
Yeah, like Gita Nagari, yeah.
Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Go ahead, Prabhu.
So, the Varnashram, right? When Prabhupada leaving his body, right? And once Prabhupada was sad, and Bhakti Charu Maharaj asked Prabhupada, why you are so sad, and it's end of the life. And Prabhupada said that, yeah, I haven't completed my mission. Then Maharaj asked Prabhupada, I mean, why are you saying that you are not completed your mission? You have, established so many centers in ISKCON. Now ISKCON is everywhere, but still, why you are saying that you haven't done, completed your mission? So Prabhupada said, yeah, I have done half of it, and the rest half is still there. So Maharaj asked, what is that rest half? So Prabhupada said, like, I want to establish Varnashram Dharma here. Okay, we established ISKCON, that is, okay, those who want to grow in spirituality, they can come, they can come and join in ISKCON and their growth in spirituality. But what if those non-devotee who do not want to, come to ISKCON? For them, Varnasrama is the way where they can, come and according to their Varna, they will, grow eventually. So that is what Prabhupada's mission also. So here the question is, how like ISKCON is working towards that Prabhupada mission? Means is there anything is going on which I am not aware of? Can you say something?
I know there is something going on at the GBC level. Maybe Pyare Prabhu might have more insight on it. But there are some discussions, planning, etc. And obviously these GEV and other projects are also kind of fulfilling to a certain extent. but I know there is some discussions at least that are going on at the GBC level. Periprabhu, do you have any insights in that?
Not really. I know that if you want to start a farm like previously, you just started a farm. Now you have devotees. We have people in charge of like all farms, and they have to make sure that you're able to maintain the cows, because I guess they've had problems in the past. So make sure the land is suitable for cows, make sure that you can actually, maintain the cows, otherwise they say you can't do it. And there's a lot of places that can't do it. The people who want to start a farm, and they're making it harder because they're not really, it's just like most of us. If we just go out and start a farm, we don't know what we're doing. And we find out, oh, we can't really do this. How are we going to take care of the cows? At least that I know they've done. And they have meetings. I went to one meeting at Gita Nagari for the US, all the people who are interested in farming. This was before we got Glastonbury Temple. And we were looking for like a farm with a temple. But of course, that we have a nice temple now instead, which makes more sense. At least
Yeah.
first, we should have that established. And I don't know anything specific. I know certain devotees are they've written papers and some books on Varnashram Dharma and how to establish it, because that's what Prabhupada wanted. But a lot of people have different opinions of Varnashram Dharma. So I don't know. All I know is the thing that I see is missing mostly is the farms. And that's more, he wanted his farm self-sufficient to maintain, you produce enough food, enough milk, enough fuel, enough everything to sustain yourself. And if there's extra, you can sell that and get other things. I mean, anyway, we could talk about farms some other time, because that's a very lengthy subject to discuss. And all the people interested in farms can get on that call. And probably have like one or two people.
No, I'm interested in a farm. I want to milk cows.
Yeah, that's what everybody wants to do, but there's a lot more than milking cows.
I saw a video of a devotee. She had no idea how to milk the cow, but she went to milk the cow, and the cow kicked her so hard on the face that she had a broken jaw. So be careful, Mataji.
Really? Well, when I was young, my grandmother had cows, so we used to milk cows.
Okay.
But I know exactly what you're saying. A very temperamental cow can really break your jaw.
Chaitya Guru, who used to be at this temple, he has some cows in Alachua, and he has them trained where he milks them. He doesn't even tie them up. They just stay there. And myself and Jiva milked a couple of cows there. And none of us
Those are the kind of cows you need to get, Pierre.
Cows in the mode of goodness. Brahmin cows. I mean, the point was I'm trying to say is it's not easy to milk a cow.
Well, we used to do a lot of cow dung cakes, that I remember. My grandmother used to put us to work.
So who's going to volunteer for the cow dung cakes?
You have one volunteer here. I have experience in that.
You can be our acharya.
I could be. My whole life is one of cow dung cakes. I could be an acharya.
Jiva said she tried it in India once, and she said, your hands smell. You can't get that smell out.
I distinctly remember every year my grandmother would make us do it.
That's nice.
So, and we used to chant kirtan while we were doing it. We used to, I even remember the song, you know, she used to say, Ayodhya Vasi Ram, Dasharatha Nandana Ram. Ayodhya Vasi Ram, Dasharatha Nandana Ram, Janaki Jeevana Sita Mohan Ram. We said that over and over again while we did the cow duck cakes.
I think I've heard that from Loknath Maharaj, that song. It's a very nice song.
So we used to sing that song over and over and over again when we did the cow dung cakes.
How many people here would like to help out on a farm besides just milking cows? How
Prabhu,
can,
I can buy milk from the farm.
yes, Prabhu, there are one more hand I see.
I don't see. One, who is it?
Dev Prabhu.
Dev Prabhu.
Okay. Okay, so we got about
opportunity.
about 4 people so far.
Yes, Prabhu. I mean, I can do the service. It's Rasraj Das.
Yes, I know. I do recognize your voice. Okay, and I am going to remember that.
I can help if you train me, Prabhuji.
I don't know if it's possible.
I think we should leave him to lecture giving service.
Udras cannot be trained in cow protection.
Yeah, but we definitely like to get a farm too. That's the next big project. Oh, let me just tell those people on the call here today that we had the inspection, not inspection. The inspectors came out and we told them our plan, what we'd like to do to fix the chimney, because right now we have to build stairs that go up and all around the top of the chimney, very, very expensive. So we're going to bring the chimney down. Anyway, whatever, just to make a long story short, is they're most likely going to approve it, but they just have to go and look at the, I guess, the laws about it. You have to be so far away from the building, you have to be so far away from the street, you know. So they're going to make sure that those are followed. So that means, and they also looked at the work we did over the hood, because there was a lot of plumbing there and electric, and all the plumbing is now fine, and they inspected that. And the electric, there's one electric thing that may have to be done, and it's not even positive yet. So, and it's not a big deal that they have to move. So we're getting really close to, if they approve this, we're very, very close to finally getting the kitchen approved, inspected and approved. So it's actually good news for today. And I don't know when they're gonna tell us for sure it's okay. Then we just have to have somebody do it and pay, just pay for it, basically. Yeah, so as far as paying for it goes, we definitely need some Vaishyas to help out here. So, and they don't have to be farmers, but just business people who can donate money. That's all.
So you mean salaried people should not donate, right, Prabhu?
No, salary people, I'll count that as business.
Okay. But salaried people are under the category of Shudras.
Yeah, but they're not really Shudras, because Shudras don't get salaries.
They do, right?
No, they do not. They get what they need. They get clothes, they get food, because Shudras don't know what to do with money, so they don't give it to them.
Okay.
So you're not exactly a Shudra. It's just like
You've been promoted to the Vaishya level.
Just for this project.
You can donate now.
Yes. Yeah, so if you're donating to the temple, then you're not a Shudra, because the Shudras don't know what to do with their money, and that means you're using it properly. So anybody who's not donating, who's a Shudra and they want to get raised up,
Okay, I think you can end here. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for joining. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhyabhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.